Today, we're going to talk about peer pressure. It doesn't discriminate. We all go through peer pressure at any age. Some of us still continue to go through peer pressure. If you're feeling that, type in pressure for me in the chat. Likewise, we're in mastermind groups. The FOMO is real. You know, we teach you things, and I always want to make sure it's in alignment with you. I don't want to force you in a pathway. I want you to find yourself in the pathway. Yeah, parent pressure as well, most definitely. It doesn't discriminate, especially at any age as well. So when it comes to peer pressure today and what we're going to be talking about, number one, it's for your kids in your own home and the students you're coaching day to day in the classroom, or the teenagers inside your programs, but also for you as a parent and for you in where you're sitting in life as well too. You know, for some of you, you're still suffering internally because you're trying to manage external pressure and trying to figure out what is it that I actually want in my own life too, or my business. If you can relate, type relate for me in the chat. We are no different to the kids. So come in as a student today, and then also as a coach to apply these frameworks inside your organization. And just to remind you of how much or how many high schoolers have felt peer pressure over their time, it's 85%. I honestly feel like it's more than that. There's a lot of research and data on this, but 85% of high schoolers have felt peer pressure, and there's different forms of peer pressure as well that we'll go through today. But it's just something to be mindful of where our teenagers are sitting. They're being controlled by external forces. We spoke about that a couple of weeks ago in our mind expansion training as well. And so that's pretty scary, because if they're in the wrong environments, or they're being conditioned by adults that don't even know any better as well, like we have a lot on our plate as coaches. We have a big responsibility. Type in responsibility for me in the chat. With leadership, with legacy, with the organization you're building, it comes with a lot of responsibility. So I want you to be open to that. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to solve their life story. Just be open to being grateful for the responsibility to help them navigate. Type in navigate for me in the chat. We're just helping them navigate a world where they're constantly being pressured by external forces that may or may not necessarily serve them. So a key question we're going to always ask our teenagers is, does it serve you? Does it serve me? Does it serve the family? Because school can also be a problem. Like it could be, or it couldn't. Maybe school actually isn't the problem. You know, my model of the world is you focus on what's going on in the home. Any teenager can thrive in school. I just think school is not the only problem. A lot of people are very quick to blame school, when in reality, if you put that teenager into a different school, experience has shown that a lot of problems just still stem and follow them because they haven't handled the real problem. Sounding good, guys? If we're tracking, once again, type in tracking for me in the chat. So it's just something to be very, very mindful of. I want you to write this down as well for yourself. When teens are influenced, so what is peer pressure in general? Feel free to take a screenshot. It's when teenagers are influenced to engage in a behavior or an activity that they may not already engage in or want to. They're feeling pressured to do something, in other words, that they don't already do, or they simply don't want to do it. It could be good, positive, or negative pressure. So we just need to be mindful of, do they already do it? And deep down, do they actually want to do it? And this is where adults, we need to be mindful. We need to step in and share our professional judgment from time to time. Because if we know it's going to lead to a positive outcome, my model of the world as a teen coach is I'm happy to pressure them in a positive way. If you can relate to that, type in relate. If I feel like I'm pressuring them in a negative way, well, then I wouldn't move forward with that suggestion or that feedback. Sounding good? So it's a delicate dance we need to be very mindful of when it comes to coaching our teenagers, especially making sure it's in alignment with where the parents are sitting. And that's why I always tell you guys, integrate the family, talk to the parents. If you're sharing your view of the world in a household that have opposite beliefs, you can get yourself in trouble as a teen coach. And that's where a lot of school teachers go wrong, because they don't understand the family and the customs. This feel is, I'm bringing you into my teaching world at the moment, because the coaching space is very unregulated. A lot of coaching schools don't talk about this. You can get yourself in front of a teenager, and if you just don't have the right protocol, structure, belief systems in place, you can get your butts into trouble. And I don't want that for you guys. And you won't get into trouble anyway, because you're always going to lean on us and ask for feedback and advice. Awesome. So where do teenagers feel pressure? Who's pressuring them? Let's get some activity in the chat. Get your phalanges working for me. Awesome. So let's add that to our list. Thank you for those who gave us some extra bonuses here. We've got classmates, whether they're their friends or not, they're being influenced by their classmates. Church friends, they have a lot of friends in church, right? That could be a positive or negative influence on them. Their neighbors, who has children or who lives in a neighborhood, like your neighbors are literally right next door. Type in neighbors for me in the chat. Your neighbors' children could also be influencing the teenagers. Sporting team, co-workers, some of them have part-time jobs. So they'll be also being influenced by their boss and their friends in their work, family members, cousins, and as we mentioned, social media too. So safe to say that there's a lot going on in a teenager's life that we may not know or hear about. If you agree, type agree for me. They're being influenced by so many sources. And if a teenager doesn't know how to navigate and listen to their internal voice, they're going to get lost in this very crazy world. They're just going to be living at effect of everyone else around them. They won't have discipline to listen to themselves or use or even just ask for feedback from adults with professional judgment. They're just going to be followers. In other words, they're going to be sheep, which to some extent they already are. They do follow, but at what cost? Or is it healthy? We need to be mindful of that. Is it healthy and what they're following right now? I want you to write this down as well. Feelings of needing to fit in and be liked by everyone else, it can persist. Like teenagers will often do things just to fit in because it's a human need. And we're going to go through human needs in a moment. We may think it's crazy, but a teenager will do it just to fit in. And for some of you, for the parents in the room as well, like your teenagers know better. You've been drilling the messages in their head for so long. They know what to do and what not to do. But when it comes to their social cliques, they will sacrifice their morals and their values to fit in. There is a small percentage of teenagers who won't. And I love that. I'd love for more teenagers to just listen to their internal voice a little bit better. As coaches, we're helping teenagers fuel their human needs in very resourceful ways. Why do we do this? Is because a human need is going to be met either resourcefully or unresourcefully, because the human need has to be met. Unfortunately, for a lot of teenagers, they're feeding their human needs in very unresourceful ways. Risky behaviors, drug taking, sexual activity, vaping, skipping school, not studying for an exam, hanging out with, for lack of better terms, not the right friends that feed their own values and their morals. So as coaches, we need to understand what's the human need that we're addressing right now, and how can I help them feed it in a very resourceful way. By the way, as parents and adults and coaches in the room, this is a great lesson for you, because we all have those human needs, but for some of you as well, you might be feeding your human need in a very unresourceful way. But you still feel good in the short term because the need is being met, until you realize it wasn't the right decision you made or the right behavior, because it eventually it's going to lead to a negative emotion stemming from there. Cool. Awesome. So let's get into human needs. If you're aware of Tony Robbins' work, this wouldn't be a surprise to you. You've probably heard this a million times before. So number one, we all have human needs of certainty. Teenagers want to feel certain, and when they don't, stress and anxiety creeps up. It's why transitioning periods in a teenager's life can be very detrimental to their mental health, because they're uncertain. They don't know what's coming up. Their bodies are changing, their hormones are raging, they're changing schools, they're going into college, they've just, entered a new relationship, parents just got divorced. So they're trying to feel the need for certainty in situations where transition is occurring. Awesome. The next one is variety. Teenagers crave variety, and when they get bored, they're going to either feed the need for variety in a very resourceful or unresourceful way. We'll give you some more examples around that. Significance. We all have a need for significance. We want to be recognized. Teenagers are no different to that. Connection. We have another need for connection. We have growth and contribution. Now, remember, the lesson here is I want you to be mindful of teenagers are going to feed their needs in a resourceful or unresourceful way. As long as the need is being met, in their opinion, they think that that's okay. So a couple of examples here. Significance. Doing the work in school, getting rewarded, awards, great marks. That feeds a teenager's need for significance. On the flip side, acting up in class, wanting to go for like the class clown title. It's still feeding the need for significance, but in a very unresourceful way, because they're mucking around in school and they're not really putting their efforts into just, going for great performance because they can, not because they don't want to. It's because they're just feeding their human needs in a different way. Are we tracking, guys? Is this sounding good? And then they get attached to the title of the class clown, when in reality, they're not actually a clown. It's just that's the only way they feel they can get significance in the classroom. Awesome. Other things around connection. Let's have a look here. Connection. Well, I'm going to do things so I can fit in with my friends. I'm going to do things so I can feel like I actually belong. Now, that could be good or not so good. I want to talk about contribution right now. This is where risky behaviors can fall in as well. They do things to serve others. Are they doing it to serve others and also serve themselves? Or are they only doing things to serve others to fit in once again? 33% of teenage boys are actually pressured to have sex. To make them feel like they're, a young man, young boy, I look cool, I feel cool in the short term. And then a lot of young females are also pressured to have sex to do things for their partners, their boyfriends, etc., because they want to serve other people. So can we see here how the need for contribution is being met in a very unresourceful way, a risky behavior? Now, my model of the world is if a young girl is having sex at 13 years of age, my model of the world is that's a problem. We also need to be mindful of where the parents are sitting and their model of the world, because for some parents, that's actually not a problem. And we need to be respectful as teen coaches to be okay with that. We need to be very mindful of just not projecting and lean in with curiosity, guys. When we're exploring peer pressure with teenagers, our role is to get curious and it's to not judge. And if anything, in alignment with our values is to help them feel safe and feel heard. We don't want to project. We can ask for permission to share what we think, but also be very mindful of you've got to understand, is this in alignment with where the parents are sitting? You need to figure out where the parents are and actually how they're parenting their teenagers as well. So for example, give you some little bonus hacks here. I hope you guys are writing notes. When I meet parents, I ask, I'm just curious, if the topic of sex came up in our sessions, do I have your permission to explore that with your child? Because my model of the world is, I'm happy to talk about that with teenagers because I came from an upbringing where we spoke about those things. Even though from a Christian background in a Catholic household, it wasn't a thing it's not normal for us growing up in the church for us to have sex at such a young age, but just talking about it, it's a thing for us in our family and also in my existing career. So I bring that into the coaching space. Some of you, you're maybe not there yet. Maybe you freak out. You're like, I don't even know what to say when a teenager brings up that topic. That's okay. We'll support you through that or give you other resources to guide them. So coming back to where I sit with parents is, number one, are you okay in case the topic came up? Because teenagers will come to you guys. Can you agree? Like, they come to you for programs, but they might disclose something later on. So you need to be prepared to handle it. Even if it doesn't fit your genius, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to help them get good grades here. Then all of a sudden they disclose that they just had sex. You know, you got to be ready for that. Don't be surprised. Nothing surprises me anymore. Secondly, I asked the parent, are you willing to be open and continue the conversation with your child in the home outside of my coaching sessions with them? That's the game changer right there, in my opinion, as a coach. Because I believe, or my model of the world, once again, is if a teenager doesn't feel safe to talk about these risky behaviors with their parents, my model of the world says that's a problem. You can agree to that or you can disagree, and that's completely okay as well. You just got to figure out what's your model of the world and what's your coaching style. If a parent doesn't feel comfortable to talk about drugs, sex, alcohol, peer pressure, whatever it is, with their own child that they gave birth to, my model of the world once again says that's a problem from a parenting angle. We got to figure out where those parents sit too, because some parents will be like, that's fine. That's what school's for. They can go learn it in PE class. Like, some parents are like that too, and that's okay. We just got to be okay with understanding where the parents are, so we figure out what our coaching style is as well. Of the coaching space is unregulated. Now, the tone that we want to create and the standard that we want to set is, we do want you guys to be mandatory reporters. Now, that's just our guideline under Teen Coach Academy. Other life coaching schools may not tell you that. So we personally want to set that tone, just knowing from an educator's world, I think it's a good thing. So what we're actually doing is we're dropping in a mandatory reporting handbook for all of you inside practitioner. That's going to roll out over the next couple of weeks or so. So that was a beautiful reminder for us as well. So you guys just know that in case you do want to report, you've got somewhere to go in your respective states. There are positive sources of peer pressure. It leads to positive results and healthier lifestyle choices from an educated standpoint. Like, is it backed up? Do I know this is going to actually lead to a healthier lifestyle, or am I just assuming and sharing my advice here? So we do want to go off facts. I want to know why, from a personal standpoint, why I'm giving up coffee. I actually gave up coffee. I quit coffee altogether, but I want to know why. I don't want to just quit it because everyone else, has said quit it. And so I just want to know, for what purpose do I want to lead or do this type of behavior? And is there an educated result behind it too? There's negative peer pressure. Well, obviously it leads to negative results and unhealthy lifestyle choices. So guys, are we open now to falling on facts, research? Type in yes for me. Not just our model of the world anymore. Facts, research. Like, if we're talking from a church space at the moment, or Christianity, they'll be like, oh, you don't have sex before marriage, right? Because it's just their projection. And so that's their only argument. And that's why a lot of people don't listen, because it's like, oh, there's another churchgoer saying that to a young teenager, but there's actual science and what it does to the teenage brain and the body if they are having sex at a much younger age. Does that make sense? It's not just because it's a sin and you're going to go to hell. People outside of the church also have those belief systems. Cool. Or other things around drugs. Don't take drugs because it's a sin. You're going to lose a lot of your teenagers by going in that frame. You go in, well, here's what it actually does to your brain. If a teenager is sleep deprived, what does it do to the brain? What does it do to their body? What does it do to their metabolism? Here's the facts. So I want you to wear your educator cap at times so parents can see, oh, now I understand. I'm not just projecting my model of the world. I'm going off facts here. Opinion, a negative example of peer pressure is when a teenager doesn't feel safe. It might be a very simple thing for us, and we are pressuring them in a good way. But if it leads to more stress and anxiety, even though I know it's going to lead to a positive result, I still may not go ahead with it because it's really heightening their anxiety right now. If you're with me, type I'm with you, Lenita. Like, even though I know it's healthy, at what cost am I going to push them though? Because they're scared about something else. So I don't want to heighten their anxiety to get to the outcome. I want to explore and take my time a little bit more as a coach, and also helping their parent as well. I want you to get back in tune with what we're trying to teach you here with our core competencies. We've spoken about building rapport. If you push a teenager to lead to a positive result, you still will break rapport. It's a fine line. You do need to get permission. So you might be thinking, like, for example, starting the coaching process. Like, you don't want to physically force them to go to coaching. You need to help coach them through it to break down limiting beliefs. That's how you build rapport in a very resourceful way. Then it leads to a positive outcome. We have active listening, for example, following your session structure as well. And one core competency I want to throw in today for you guys to focus on is powerful questioning. Write that down for yourself. Powerful questioning when it comes to scenarios where teenagers are feeling pressured, either in a good or not so good way. Awesome. So from a coaching perspective now, this is where we throw the relevance in for you guys, because your teenagers are getting pressured, pretty much almost daily. You're wearing your coaching cap now. You're sitting in a session or having a conversation with a parent or a teenager, or they've just disclosed some information to you, and you've already built rapport. From a session structure standpoint, your assumed rapport, they're starting to talk about what's going on, and now you're getting curious as a teen coach. Talk to me more about that. Let's explore the scenario they're either thinking about or they're in already, okay? It's either about to happen, or they're in it, or it's already happened. Cool? Pre, during, and post scenario, in other words. So here's some questions for you guys that I want you to make it easier. I'll leave it up on here for you. The first one is, what about that behavior or action makes you feel pressured? Explore it. Explore it with them. What's the right decision for you? As a coach, you don't want to project. You want to ask them first. We'll talk a little bit more around if they don't know the answer to that. But what's the right decision for you? Give your teens some credit. They're smarter than you think. If you agree, type agree for me in the chat. They've been parented well. For the most cases, like, you're attracting a certain type of parent. So back them. They know what they need to do. What do you secretly want to do that's best for yourself? Because we're looking for solutions here as coaches. Remember this, right? By doing that, this is one of my favorites, is it respecting your own body and boundaries for both boys and girls? By doing that, is it respecting your own body and boundaries? They do know better. They know drugs is not the right thing to do. They know that. They hear it all the time, especially in school. And so don't be afraid to ask them these questions. Is it respecting your body? Is it respecting your beliefs? Is it respecting your values? When you start talking to them like they're adults, they'll step up. Don't talk to a 12-year-old like they're 12. Talk to them like they're 15. That's how you build rapport with teenagers, by the way. Don't talk to an 18-year-old like they're 18. Talk to them as if they're 21. If you love that, type in love for me. They're still babies, don't get me wrong. It's just the tonality and the way you're speaking to them now. That's how they start to stand up straight, be more mature, come to you with more matured conversations, because they know you're going to hold space for them for those conversations as well. They're capable. Just give them the space. Would you still engage in that behavior if you were alone or with a different group of friends? Would you still engage in that behavior if you were alone or with a different group of friends? So this is more from a negative peer pressure outlet. Often the answer would be what? You let me know. Type in yes or no. If they were alone or they had a different group of friends, they're feeling pressured in a very unresourceful way, they most likely wouldn't go ahead and do it. So there's two things we need to explore. Number one, the power of their internal voice. Number two, the quality of friends that they have. And that's a constant conversation we're always having with our parents anyway, right? The next one, who said that you have to do that? Is it really true? Who said you have to try vaping? Who said you have to partake in sexual activity? Who said that you have to have pot to reduce anxiety? Who said that? And is it an educated opinion? Is it an educated, you probably wouldn't ask that to the teenager, but I'd probably get you to ask that to the parent. I'm just curious, is that an educated opinion? Let's look and explore the facts together. Next one. What do you want to say or do instead? Empower them as coaches to come up with solutions. Remember that? We're not giving them the solutions yet. We want to empower and prompt them. What do you want to do or say instead? Talk to me. And then the next one is if they're too stuck in their head, you want to get them out of that scenario and introduce a friend. If your friend was asking for advice about what to do in this situation, what would you say to them? Get them out of their own head and start thinking about if this was your brother, if this was your younger brother or your younger sister, what would you say to them? Hey, maybe one day when you have your own daughter or your own son, what would you say to them? And then that way they can get out of their own head and start actually, being really real. And then you go in with, well, would it be helpful if you followed your own advice? Who's heard that before as a coach? Wouldn't it be helpful if you actually followed your own advice? And that's where they start to see, wow, I get it. If I'm going to tell my friend that, how come I'm not following that for myself? By the way, from a coaching perspective, this is a session. This is a session or two. You're just sitting there and you're exploring. You're getting clear on where they're sitting, what's the scenario, what's the human need they're trying to feed, and then challenge them on that. Challenge them on that. It's a big wake-up call for a lot of teenagers. They actually might feel upset with you because now they realize what they're doing is probably not the best thing for them. Now they realize they don't have the best of friends. They'll be upset for a little while. That's okay. I'd rather you cry now than cry later. That's my belief system. I probably wouldn't say that to the teenager, but I would say, I'm okay. I'd rather you cry now than cry later. I'd rather the parent cry now than cry later. I'd rather them not like me now so then they can like me later. Okay, so if you love that, borrow that. Let's move on. For what purpose do you want to do that? That's where you start to feed their human need. For what purpose do you want to do that? I want to know why they're doing that. This is where we move into educating. We all have human needs to feel belonged, because I know it's probably for a sense of belonging. I'm just curious, is this a healthy way for you to feed that need? So see how now we're educating them on their human needs? Is this a healthy way? If no, well, how can you feel included in other healthy ways, behaviors, or actions? I'm looking for an alternative way to feed the same need. That's the brilliance of a coach. You take away gaming and you don't know why you're taking away gaming, it's very detrimental to a teenager's well-being. Because now what you're doing is you've now taken away their social life. You've thrown in consequences. You have now, I guess, for lack of better terms, punished them when all they really wanted was to feel a sense of connection and belonging. So when your parents come in and say, I just took away gaming, I just took away their iPad, I just took away their laptop, you got to figure out, is that actually a good thing? Because for a lot of teenagers, you've just punished them for having friends in their model of the world. And then lastly, what are some lessons you're learning about yourself? Ask the teenager that question. What are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about your friends? What are you learning about that scenario? What could you do differently next time? What I love to always share with you guys, and I want you to borrow it and give it to your teenagers, sometimes getting the lesson is far greater than getting the outcome. I know you got hurt in that scenario. Sometimes you just needed to learn and get that lesson. So we figure out what to do or what not to do next time. So we can't pressure ourselves to prevent our teenagers from getting hurt. They will get hurt to some extent. Type agree for me in the chat. They will. You can't protect them from that. Don't try to just over cuddle. You probably will cripple them. And I'm probably talking more to the parents in the room here. They are going to get hurt to some extent. We just need to manage the levels of hurt they will be experiencing. But always remember and tell them, sometimes Mary, Sam, sometimes you just had to learn that lesson, and getting the lesson is far greater than getting the outcome. That's hard for someone that's been hurt emotionally or physically or any type of abuse. That's hard, but we need to reassure them and get them resourceful and reflect on the lessons and how can we manage, prevent, protect ourselves in future. I want to bow tie this segment with a few guidelines as well, right? Always remember, they're not rules, they're guidelines as teen coaches. It's a delicate dance. You've got to explore your model of the world and lean in with curiosity. We spoke about human needs. Once again, you got to figure out what's the human need this teenager is trying to meet. Sense of belonging often when it comes to peer pressure. Sense of contribution. They want to impress and do things for other people. Community, love. What else? Significance. They want to do things to impress their friends so they feel significant. So explore the human need first, then explore the behavior, the action, and do the reframe. How can we feed this human need with a different behavior or a different decision? Sounding good, guys? You'll change a teenager's life, a parent's life. Some parents try to feed their need for love and connection by hovering over their teenager, and they get upset and they don't want them to move out of home, or they don't want them to go and explore life because the parent hasn't fed that need from their spouse. They have marriage problems, or they don't have a social life, and so they've attached their whole identity to being a mum or being a dad. And so some of your parents will be sitting there as their kids graduate high school. They become more independent. They move out and move to college. They go and travel on that first European trip. And the parent is miserable because they're trying to feed their need for love and connection very unresourcefully through the life of their own child. So now we've solved some of our parents in the world that you're supporting them through. We're now going to help them feed that need in a very resourceful way. By the way, as teen coaches, we still do that. Even though you're not sharing about that in your marketing, at some point, you're going to explore it with your teenagers or their parents, given you want to explore that conversation. Number one, rule of thumb here is I want you to lead with curiosity, not judgment. Always, right? Just depends, like I definitely have my own sets of values and expectations. And I think to myself one day, man, like, God help my kids. Like, I don't want to be so hard on them. And then I'm thinking to myself, like, I need to be okay with, like, this is my model of the world and how we may run our household or how I'd coach with other teenagers. But I'm just always going in with a lens of curiosity. And if anything, as a believer, I'm never going to judge them. I want to go in and actually be accepting of where they're at in their life too. So lead with curiosity, not judgment. Number two is I want you to explore the teens' model of the world and their human needs. So what I mean by that is what's acceptable and okay for them. They might not think that's a problem. By the way, this is also applicable to the parents. What's the parents' model of the world? Because if it's not a problem, guys, don't make it a problem. Does this make sense? Like, if it's not a problem for the client, don't create chaos just because it's not part of your model of the world. I think a lot of life coaches make mistakes here. If it's not a problem for the client, or they're not willing to be open to a different perspective or a different model of the world, don't fight them. Don't make it a problem until they're ready to hear more or different later. If that's a game changer for you, type in game changer. If it's not a problem and they're not willing to hear it, don't make it a problem. It's just going to cause it's going to create headaches for you. And, like, just don't do that. It's not worth it right now. Remove resistance later on. Where are you sitting? Talk to me about it. Is that okay for you? Do you feel safe? Are you happy? If you're not happy, are you open to talking about it? And that's how you transition. If they know it's a problem, then you transition. Number 3, challenge their thinking with powerful questioning. You guys have now been equipped today with some awesome questions to have up your sleeve. Where do you use them? Remember, get resourceful. Inside your coaching sessions, you're in front of your keynote, speaking on stage with the kids, bring up a kid on stage. Who's done that yet or not yet? Type in not yet for me. When I'm in schools, and a lot of the time in the past when I have been in schools, I get a student up on stage and I coach them. I use the 5-step team coach method that you all learn inside Practitioner. I get the high school student on stage and I coach. It's brilliant because it's practical and they're like, oh my gosh, Michael or Sam's on the stage right now, and it's engaging, but you're also breaking down and you're asking powerful questions. Where else? In the car, when you're driving for the parents in the room on the way to school drop-offs, pickups, recess and lunch, the educators in the room. You can use this anywhere, these powerful questionings, via text message. Some teenagers want to talk to you via text rather than face-to-face. Awesome, that's cool. Reflection questions during your group coaching classes. Pop them up on screen. Start getting conversations surfacing a little bit more too. Yeah, they can't escape the car. And they actually feel safe in the car too. A lot of them will open up while you're driving because they think, oh, she's not paying attention, she's driving or he's driving. Guideline number 4, attach new beliefs to their identity and scenario. What have you learned about yourself today? What type of leader do you want to be in order to believe that this is true? That's another question, by the way, that you can ask. What do you now think about the scenario? What do you now think about these behaviors? What do you now think about your friends? Awesome. Beauty. Light bulb moments. You've got to attach new beliefs and new identity because remember, you're a teen coach. You're shifting their identity. They don't have a grades problem. They have an identity problem. They don't have a relationship problem. They have an identity problem. A young girl or a young boy who always ends up in very unhealthy dating relationships, they have an identity problem. They don't think they're worth it enough to have a healthy boyfriend or a healthy girlfriend that serves them. That's why they're constantly in negative relationships. Help their belief systems, help their identity. And then they grow and they're like, cool, I deserve better now. All right. And then they go and they actually end up in a healthier relationship. Guideline number 5, celebrate them for opening up and choosing healthier decisions. This is very important. We've spoken about this before. When they open up, when they ask questions, when they disclose information, as teen coaches, we need to celebrate them so we can actually reprogram their mind that when they open up about sensitive or risky behaviors, they're going to be celebrated. They're not going to be judged. Sounds good. They're not going to be judged. They're not going to be made fun of. They're not going to be criticized. So now they're more inclined to open up a little bit more and more and more as they grow older. And they won't tuck things under the rug because there's no stigma around that anymore too. So if you love that one, who needs to celebrate their teenagers a little bit more? Type in more for me in the chat. Within reason, remember this, in this context, we celebrate them when they open up, when they be honest, when they get vulnerable. Celebrating a teenager too much without them working for it can be very detrimental and they fall into the entitlement trap. So be very careful there. In this context, we're celebrating them when they open up and they get vulnerable. Awesome. And then the bonus guideline here, guideline number 6, for me to throw a bonus in here for you, is continue the conversation in the home. So what I would also acknowledge you or empower you guys to do is to share these questions with their parents. Be open. Remember, there's a fine line between like what the teenagers told you and whether you want to say that to the parent or not. Figure out your style. My style is I'd love to share these questions and let your parents know what I spoke about this week. Are you okay to continue the conversation this week before I see you next week? That's my expectation as a teen coach. So if you want to borrow that. I give the questions to the parents so they can explore those conversations. So the next time they see me, they've spoken about it. They've either spoken to an older sister or an auntie or their mum or their dad. If you love that frame, type in love. Remember, once again, that's my model of the world. If parents aren't talking about these things in the home and they just rely on me, that's a problem for me. Okay, I really want to encourage them to get open as a family and not tuck things under the rug anymore. If I can help a teenager, I want you to borrow this belief system. If I can help a teenager build a healthy, non-judgmental relationship, or non-toxic, for lack of better terms, relationship with their mum or their dad, I feel like I've won as a teen coach. If you resonate with that, type in resonate. If I can help a parent fall in love more and more with their teenage daughter or son, remove judgment, maybe heal their own wounds in the process because they're their own projection, like, I think I've won as a teen coach as well. So be open to exploring things much deeper than what your genius is or your niche is on paper. We're dealing with humans, with life stories. We're not just marketing a niche. In other words, it's just far deeper now with what we're doing.